Hi, I'm Manny Howard. This is Salon Talks. I'm here with Robyn Metcalfe, who's a food historian, a food futurist, a professor at the University of Texas in Austin, and the author of Food Routes, which is also pronounced Food Routes, which is what the book is about. It's about the logistics of delivering food from creator to consumer. And it's an often overlooked and vital, central part of what all the food questions that we're asking ourselves these days. Why'd you write the book?
That's a good question, because I felt really compelled to write this book because all the conversations about food focusing on the latest way you can grow food, putting food on rooftops, whether we should eat insects or not. I mean, there's all this activity happening about on the ground about how and where we should make our food. And also all the conversations about the latest and greatest food product itself.
Right.
But at the end of the day, none of those ideas were really going to go anywhere until they could figure out a way to scale it through the movement of ingredients and the delivery of food.
Right.
So all these ideas were breaking down, or at least struggling, because of this sort of like this dark area that no one wants to talk about.
People were concerned about small food versus big food, and what was left out of the conversation was how do we even get food?
How do we even get it from place to place?
Right.
And unless you can do that, unless you can manage the flow of food from the farm to the plate, really game over. There's really not much we can do to improve it.
Right.
So I wrote it because I really felt that we should shine some light on that area so we could figure out where the friction spots are,
Right.
and therefore where we could apply some new thinking and some innovation in order to resolve that.
Right.
And there's just a lot of issues about it that we just don't know anything about. We don't even know who those people are that do it.
So let's take it out of the dark a little bit. What is a food supply chain, and how has it changed to where we are now, and what's going to happen now that we're not in the industrial age anymore, but we're in the data age?
Right.
So how does it?
Well, food's moved around the world since the Romans. I mean, since a really long time ago,
Right.
When the early traders started moving food throughout the Roman Empire on roads and on ships, and even before then, the Sumerians. I mean, that's where trade was food. The moment you could make more food than your family or your village could consume, you began to sell it, right, and figure out where to send it. So it's sort of logistics, it really, which implies sort of optimizing and being logical about that process, right, came into its being through the military, like in the Punic Wars. I mean, early on, wars were thought to be fought over food supply. I mean, it was a strategy. You could, if you ran out of food, you lost the war.
Right.
So being logistical about it was very much about winning wars in the early period, and that's when people began to calculate, how much land your horses would need to be able to feed the horses, so that you could move on to the next stage of the battle.
Right. Right. So the war was being fought over food, and also won or lost by how much, whether or not you could feed your army while you were doing it.
Right. Well, and that came out of with Napoleon's army, relies on, crawls on its stomachs.
Right.
It really has to have its food supply, and of course that was a real defeat in the war.
Right. The quote is an army marches on its stomach.
Yeah.
Right.
And so it's tied to that really early on. And of course now that's expanded way beyond the military, and so now we have all kinds of computer programs and things today that help solve for what's the optimal way to move food from place to place.
And before the Industrial Revolution, cities had green belts around them that supplied them, right? And then industrialization made it, the cities grew so big that the food had to come from further and further away.
Right. Well, and a lot of things changed as well that enabled that. I mean, first of all, no one wanted to grow food in cities because the land costs were so high.
Right.
Put people in houses and get rents from houses and things like that. Don't put,
right.
grazing pastures.
Right.
And also, technology has occurred. I mean, when you had the railroad appearing, that's really the first time you could now go many fars away
Right.
and get your food.
And straight into the heart of the city.
And right into the city as
Right.
well. So you have combinations of what's going on in the city for land values and people,
Right.
and also technologies that are bringing it in from far away.
And refrigeration was one of those great sort of marks in the calendar.
Right, and that all happened, in that wonderful 19th century period, which I believe that's everything that's really worth having been invented that happened in the 19th century.
Yeah.
And we're sort of like adding, little frills and twills along.
Right.
Except for this whole digital period.
Which is this, with the idea of optimization of the food of all industries, including the one, editorial, the one I'm in,
right.
Through data.
Right.
And that it's being able to track or anticipate a course that has always been, a point A to B that's always been made, a journey that's always been made, but along the way break it up into 1,000 pieces and know where it is,
right.
and make it more efficient. What are some of the examples?
Well, I think the problem, what's really, I think, sort of inhibited this discovery of what goes on in the food supply chain comes from the fact that this all feels very industrial. Feels very non-human. I mean, like you're just looking at the numbers of speed, value, how do you get it there?
Right.
And people have this very, human connection with food, know your farmer, who are these people? And I think there's this resistance towards this very sort of technical industrial area where you're calculating the number of minutes it will take to have food loaded on the docks so that you don't burn X amount of gasoline.
Right.
So the human gets left out of the equation, and that's very off-putting for people who really feel humanly connected to how the food is transported.
You make a great point in the book, which is that people are always looking for stories about their food as a way of understanding themselves or understanding the group, and that these really are not the kind of stories that people want to tell.
Well, food is your identity, right? And who wants to optimize your identity, right? I mean, I think this is the thing that really came out of this book for me at the very end of it was, we have all this technology now, we're trying to optimize it, which is a good thing, by the way. This is not an anti-tech book. This is a problematic but pro-technology one, meaning like we can't possibly know the impact and the consequences of going this far and this fast into technology.
Right.
But when I got done with this book, there was this feeling that here we are, bring it on. We're going to cut down waste. We're going to deliver personalized diets. We're going to cut down on fuel use. All these good things. But where are the humans in the equation?
Right.
And so you have a big displacement in workforce coming up, just about to happen.
Right.
To
the extent that there are people still working on farms, there'll be even fewer.
The whole food supply, food processing,
truck drivers, right?
Is very much a process. A process thing. Optimizers love to optimize processes, right?
Right.
So you can make food processing faster, increase food safety by taking humans out.
Right.
So already robots, as you know, are coming in to feed us, deliver us, cut down, cut the celery in the field and everything like that.
Right.
So these are huge, job classes that are about to be made redundant.
Right.
And even though people feel, well, this is for the better because they'll either find a coding job or they'll be absorbed in our new technology. I spend a lot of time talking to those people, and I don't think they're ready to sign up to be coders.
Yeah, not everybody's a coder.
And so I think these are makers too. These are people who work with their hands.
Yeah.
And so there's also, I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist, but there is an impact that we're going to be seeing when you replace people that are used to making things with their hands, and they're not, we're not making as many things with our hands in the future, right?
Yeah. No, you have to. I'm lucky enough to do what I love. People,
right.
You have to do what you love to do it well. There's a great example. I think a conversation I was having last week, somebody was talking about a field robot that addresses each. I know you have the lettuce robot that fertilizes each individual plant, and it's a great net. It's a very positive development for fertilizer runoff and the environment and all of those things. But the first thing, you think is, do I really want that lettuce? And
Well, I think the other thing is too is that I kind of think of it as a dial that we have here, and we have like no optimization, maximum optimization here.
Right.
And we have infusion of really low tech here and super high AI, personalized drone, autonomous robots over here, right?
Right.
And I think it will be interesting to us to watch where in the dial the relationship between ourselves and food breaks down by the insertion of technology.
Yeah.
At what point do we say, to the robot who comes up to the table with our burger that's been made in a lab,
right.
do we say, nah,
right, yeah,
bring it on, I want the cow back now.
Yeah.
I want to chat with somebody.
Right.
I mean, there's going to be some sort of negotiation there between saving waste,
right.
cutting down on waste,
right.
and my freedom to eat what I want to eat.
Right.
Right. We can optimize, the heck out of this, but at some point, we may say we'd rather have a little bit more.
But we've already done that, haven't we? I mean, slow food and all the fascination we have with slow food and locally grown and all those things is a demonstrated desire to want the human story
right.
of food. Right.
But the trade-offs now are really interesting. I mean,
yeah.
if we say, we want total transparency. I want now, because I can do this with technology,
yeah.
I want to track every little step of my,
right.
My grape through the food supply chain, step by step. And you will eventually be able to do that.
Right.
I want total transparency. But, I'm really okay with having my burger made inside a lab with a man or woman in a lab coat behind
right.
closed doors.
Throwing it on a hook.
And
yeah.
that's minimal transparency
yeah.
from that standpoint.
Yeah.
But you might be able to say, I'm willing to eat, or save the planet over here and have less visibility over
right.
here. So I think we're seeing a real negotiation across what was before sort of like no technology in my food. I don't like Monsanto. Do not engineer my food.
Right.
I'm okay with using CRISPR gene editing technology whenever they want if it uses less water. Right. And I can grow more sustainably.
It's an interesting moment in the book where you say, people were hell-bent, just completely opposed to the idea of genetic modification. And then one technological development changed all of those concerns because they were no longer introducing foreign genes, right? You were manipulating the genes within
right.
the plant.
You're still editing. You're still engineering,
yeah.
though.
Yeah. It feels like a completely irrational
right.
response,
But I think that's the
right?
period we're ending, which is entering, which is there are so many moving things right now. Our landscape is changing so much
right.
that it's hard to anticipate where you're going to go in
right.
some of these trade-offs.
Right.
And there's a generational thing, I have to say. People mostly my age
yeah.
are only going to live in the Monsanto as an evil company and engineering's a bad thing.
Right.
And the people who are born with cell phones in their hands
yeah.
Feel, not quite so.
Yeah, we talk about that a lot here. We talk about, that there's really is it's not permissive is a judgmental word, and I don't mean it, but there's the younger generation, millennials do permit people to manipulate their food in a way that certainly I would rather not know about it. I'm sure I consume it all the time.
Right,
but,
right.
I like the fantasy. I operate on the fantasy that it's all, not manipulated
right.
that way.
But it is.
I think I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You do know, man.
Well, I think we'll all have choices too. I'm just sure that meat will not go away,
right.
and plants will be coming on.
But so many of us draw a line at food. Makes perfect sense to me.
Although I've been asking a question when I give talks, if or how many of the people in the room would be willing to give up all of their personal data about
right.
themselves, everything, genetics, biome, what you did last night,
yeah.
whatever, in return for a food company who could make your breakfast cereal extend your life for 10 years of quality, awesome living. And 3/4 of the hands go up. Yes.
Yeah. Doesn't matter what those 10 years are going to be like, because everybody's going to know everything about me, but I'll take them.
Right. Or, you know, maybe I'll get to see my grandkids and I wouldn't. You know what I mean? I mean, I think people are sort of saying, and I think there's also a feeling that most of your data is already out there.
Yeah.
You know, so I'll be giving an incremental amount up, but not, this is, you know,
They're
I
going
think
to get
we're
it
past
somehow.
that line, you know?
They're going to get it somehow. I might as well trade for it.
10 years, hey.
Yeah, that's a good business.
Because I just can't, you know, I'm here in New York at a conference, a future food tech conference, and I just left a session on personalized nutrition.
Right.
And that will impact everything on this whole movement of food.
Can you just describe what that is?
Well, it's basically saying that, you know, each of us have our own genetics, we have our own food tolerance, we have our own activity level, our own health issues.
Right.
And for the first time, this will be the merging of basically healthcare, you know, the medical world and the food world. Food is medicine. And if I can, you know, basically know everything about you and create a personal diet for you, personal food
delivered to
actually
me from Amazon,
and it could be delivered to you. You know, they're going into your house now. They're allowing Amazon to deliver directly into your home, have access to your home. That's pretty personal.
Yeah.
And if it, you know, this is the convenience factor that everybody wants right now, and so you'll have basically a highly personalized diet that will be crafted by through AI and big data, so that you'll be able to eat things that are suited to your own metabolism and your own health needs.
And what's the response at the conference? What are people's concerns?
None. They really have very few concerns. I think that, well, this conference, as you're going to know from the name, Future Food Tech, they're into it. And I think they're trying to figure out how do we make the most of it, and how can we break down the barriers, and what are the implications, and how can we deal with those.
Right. You address a lot of, you know, the state of play right now in the food logistics world, and also the food that's being produced that is then being moved around. You talk about urban farming, and you talk about bringing farmers to farms that are not generational farmers. You know, programs to do that stuff, and you sort of conclude with so here we are. Moment, like going forward, we're either going to, and you do offer the possibility that there's a third way, but you offer two routes. One is evolutionary, which is that we take the tech that we have now and we build it and we apply it to the food system we have now with all its flaws.
Right.
Or revolutionary, which is that we strip it all away and we start again. And I'm not clear in the book if you take a side.
I think it's more of a teaser than anything.
Yes, that's right.
Because I actually think no one knows. I mean, really, sitting in that conference, you know, no one knows. There's so many things moving right now. And I mean, if you talk to the people in Impossible Meats, it's revolutionary, right? We're going, this is a game changer. We're going to change the landscape of our food production. And we're going to do it. Look at how fast we're doing. I mean, this is a phenomenal sort of maybe bubble, but it looks revolutionary to many people through that kind of lens. And then you talk to somebody on the ground, or someone in the farming community, or someone who's looking at, on the shipping dock. I go down and talk to people unloading containers of bananas. You talk to those people, and that is, low tech, dumb tech, tough tech. They have stickies. They have clipboards.
Right.
And you've got people on the other end, the revolutionary end, saying, we're going to take all of that and put it on a blockchain.
Right.
And so I think that's where the evolutionary becomes more of a check on some of this, that we're going to say, yeah, we really want to get it all transparent. It's a revolutionary change that we're making right now. And you've got people saying, I don't necessarily want to share all my data.
Right.
Transparency has a dark side as well, especially for bad actors. And there's some people who say, I've worked really hard to develop this optimized system that I have. It's my system.
Right. Trade secrets.
Yeah.
Right?
So do I want to just basically hand that over to somebody who's going to
Right.
to
Who's
make
already
that
told
public.
me they're going to tear it down?
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I think you've got some friction points there that are legitimate from the standpoint of reality on the ground.
Yeah.
And it's not a slam dunk that all of that is just going to be digitized. Right. I think we're going there. I also don't think the revolutionary folks necessarily, this is why I don't commit in the book.
Yeah, yeah.
Is really realistic, because no one's really talking about the long-term implications. Let's just say, what does success look like for them?
Yeah.
We have to come up with a lot more plant material.
Right. You're talking about the Impossible Burger.
Yeah, when you're doing
yeah.
plant, okay, what does that look like? What does success look like? And who's going to produce all that plant material? Are you going to produce that also in a lab? Well, let's talk about that.
Right.
And if you take animals off the ground and you talk to the people in regenerative agriculture who are saying we need manure to keep our soils healthy,
right.
then what happens when that doesn't happen anymore?
Right.
So I think because it's a huge system, and anything that happens anywhere in the system has a ripple effect all around it,
right.
then, that's where the bubble, or basically the revolutionary piece gets much more complicated unless we really look at these unintended consequences.
Right. I mean, the question we ask ourselves at Salon all the time is, who benefits from this and who's being left out, right? And, the revolutionary types, and I'm not limiting this observation to the Impossible Meat Company, but they're also looking for that next round of funding, right? And so, of course, this is going to last forever, right? And that's also a concern, is that all this stuff gets overfunded and gets funded, and then the attention is on those things, and we lose focus on the little things that we can all do. Right. To, mitigate some of the costs of food production. And
remember, our farmers are no longer farmers from agricultural colleges and agronomy. They're engineers.
Right.
And software and hardware engineers.
Right.
And that's an interesting development as well.
Yeah.
Just in terms of developing an item for us that has the 5 senses involved, and I'm I'm married to an engineer, so I can disparage them, I guess.
Right.
But it has to taste good, okay?
Yeah.
And Soylent's awesome, but I don't know if you've had Soylent.
No.
Yeah.
Is it awesome?
No.
I think so.
Well, I mean, you don't have any
like
of those
a Cliff Bar,
5
right?
cents. it has a purpose, and I've tasted it. It's pretty good tasting for what it is.
Right.
But I think we leave it to the engineers to develop this future system also.
Yeah.
That
we're going to get a very efficient hockey puck.
Yeah. And
Yeah. No, it's a puzzle,
And 3D printed food, for example. I had a sample over there at the
in Brooklyn. Yeah.
And it's definitely 3D printed.
Yeah.
It's not for everybody, but it has an application. All these things have some sort of promising application, but not in a revolutionary sort of way, but sort of to solve all these little problems
piece
along
of the puzzle,
the supply chain. But I love this subject. I think that more people
me
ought
too.
to talk about it. I think it's hardly explored. And I think the revolutionary part of it is the movement from analog to digital. And the fact that this is really following the pathway of what happened to computing, from big centralized computing, Big Blue and IBM and a bunch of dumb terminals, to distributed intelligence, from big centralized food producers and distributors to distributed smart micro warehouses and personalized food.
Hundreds of thousands of creative people who can take their own personal experience on the ground and use the computer.
Right. So if you're a network geek, you're going from big centralized, computing to distributed networked.
Right. Two-way streets.
That's really the new meaning of Food Network.
Right. Well, Robyn, thank you so much for joining us here.
My pleasure.
It was really a pleasure.
Great. Thank you.